Good evening and welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Urban Planning Delegated Committee. Before we commence the meeting, I request that all mobile phones are turned off or switched to silent. Thank you for that. My name is Councillor Stavru and I'm the chair of this committee. I will start by introducing my fellow councillors. Seated to my left is Councillor Jim Park, followed by Councillor Cynthia Watson, then Councillor Felicity Sinfield, also our mayor, then Councillor Di Gillies, and on the other side of the horseshoe table, Councillor Lisa Hollingsworth, who's also our Deputy Mayor, Councillor Gary Thompson, Councillor Susan Bigger, and Councillor Victor Franco. I also acknowledge the Manager of Governance and Legal, Mr Brian Wee, to my left, and the Director of Urban Living, Scott Walker, to my right. There are other officers in attendance tonight, and they will be introduced as they present their reports. The Urban Planning Delegated Committee meeting is being live streamed on Council YouTube to enable public viewing of the proceedings. The meeting is also recorded and will be made available on Council YouTube as soon as practicable after the meeting. Excuse me. The primary purpose of the Urban Planning Delegated Committee meeting is to deal with issues under the Planning and Environment Act and the Building Act. This committee has delegated authority to make decisions on behalf of Council. And for those present this evening, when we come to the agenda item, it will be introduced by an officer and they will call you one by one to come forward and address the committee. If you're making a submission, please present your viewpoints clearly and concisely on why you support or oppose the planning application. Please do not repeat what earlier speakers have said and keep the submission focused on relevant issues and points not previously raised. If you are opposed to the planning application, please tell the committee why you disagree and suggest an alternative approach that would satisfy your concerns. Please focus on your concerns rather than matters of history or details in the officer's report. There is a strict limit of 3 minutes for each speaker, including councillors, and whilst as chair I can vary that time, I'll seldom do so. At the 2.5 minute mark, I will make this sound, indicating that you have 30 seconds remaining to conclude your presentation. And for those in the gallery this evening, I would like to take the opportunity to remind you to extend due courtesy and respect to each other and to the committee as a whole. This includes remaining quiet while others are addressing the meeting and not disrupting the decision-making process of the committee. Thank you for that as well. Mr Wee, are there any apologies this evening?
Through you, Chair, Councillors Galt and Addis are apologies this evening.
Thank you, Mr Wee. Councillors, can I also have a motion to adopt and confirm the minutes of the Urban Planning Delegated Committee meeting held on the 2nd of October 2023? Councillor Sinfield?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. Councillor Gillies?
Seconded, thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Councillors, is anybody opposed? There be no opposition. I put the motion to the vote. I declare the motion carried. Thank you, councillors. Conflict of interest declaration. Councillors and council officers, are there any conflict of interest that need to be declared this evening? There be no conflict of interest. We'll move to the main part of the agenda this evening, presentation of officer reports. We start with 3.1, Draft Camberwell Junction Structure and Place Plan. This report will be presented by Mr Arturo Ruiz, Head of Placemaking.
Chair, I might just actually provide a bit of context for this report and then hand over to the team to give a little bit more detail to it, if that's okay. Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr Walker.
Thanks, Chair. This is an important plan for Boroondara. Boroondara has been undertaking some very important strategic planning work over the last couple of years, including completion of the housing strategy a couple of weeks ago and sign off of that housing strategy, which gives a bit of an indication of where the important growth will be happening from a housing point of view. Council's also been undertaking a economic development strategy to help guide and regenerate our activity centres and the economy of the municipality. And it's these sorts of important planning pieces of work that come together at places like Camberwell. Camberwell is a really important activity centre from an employment, housing, retail, leisure perspective, not only to Boroondara but the entire eastern region of Melbourne. And undertaking critical planning work that embraces the change that's happening in a place like Camberwell is absolutely critical for the future generations in that location and the wider municipality. Boroondara hasn't turned its mind to Camberwell in terms of developing a structure plan for many, many years. And it's interesting that at this time, the state government has announced its housing statement. And that housing statement has included an action to undertake planning work and, in fact, take over the planning for, at the initial phase, 10 activity centres throughout Melbourne. Camberwell's been identified as one of those activity centres. Now, we don't yet know exactly what that means. So we don't actually understand fully what taking over the planning for places like Camberwell actually means yet. But in our view, it makes the planning work that is underway for Camberwell even more important and critical for Boroondara Council. We've engaged with the community to help guide the objectives and initial phases of this plan. And it's that embrace and work with the community that means we fully understand Camberwell as an activity centre. We need to be in a strong position and will be in a strong position to influence and guide any further planning work that the state government brings forward for a place like Camberwell. And that's why I say that this plan is absolutely critical for influencing what can happen in this place into the future. And I'll probably just make the other important point that a structure plan and place plan like this is doing a lot more than guiding just the land use and development outcomes for a place. It's guiding the future investment that we need to make as a council in an activity centre, the public realm and streetscapes, the traffic, the car parking, the future facilities and services that we provide are all guided by important documents like this plan. We need to do that work irrespective of what happens at that broader level and broader decisions that might come our way. So in that context, I'll hand over to David Cowan, our Manager of Planning and Placemaking, to take us through a little bit more of the detail of what this draft plan puts forward.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. This report presents the draft Camberwell structure and place plan for endorsement to proceed to community engagement. The draft plan presents an aspirational yet achievable plan to shape the future of Camberwell Junction. It has been developed in consultation with our community and informed by detailed background research and technical analysis. In September in 2022, consultation was undertaken on the Vision and Priorities report, with an overarching vision for Camberwell receiving 90% support. The vision foresees Camberwell Junction being revitalised as a metropolitan destination that will attract visitors, shoppers and business investment, as well as becoming a highly livable urban environment. The draft plan presents a planning framework for the centre structured under 6 themes: thriving economy, sustainable living, built form, public realm, access and movement, and community wellbeing. This planning framework sets out the strategies and actions that address the future challenges and capture opportunities for Camberwell in the future. They look at issues like how we will make Camberwell Junction a really attractive destination for shoppers and visitors, how we will guide new development to provide high-quality housing for future population, while protecting the heritage and character that locals love. As Scott mentioned, the Victorian Government has threatened to take over planning controls for the centre at the end of 2024. Therefore, it's very important we put forward considered built form controls that robustly demonstrate that the plan can accommodate that projected growth. Onto the public realm slide. The plan looks at how we can improve the attractiveness of Burke Street, a shopping strip, to visitors, how we can provide new public spaces and better access to existing green spaces to support the growing number of residents and workers in future, and also covers remaining strategies at how we look at improving transport, parking and community facilities across the precinct. The plan then focuses on 6 place precincts to provide more detailed guidance on how development should be designed and key placemaking projects that will assist with revitalising the centre in future. The Market Plaza concept at the Junction East precinct is an example of a public space project that can uplift the destinational appeal of the centre to visitors and shoppers, as well as making the precinct more livable for new residents. Over in the Junction West precinct, the guidance provided in this precinct is a good example of how the draft plan can guide and shape new development to ensure the best outcome is achieved over time. When large private land holdings, such as the site indicated in this diagram, are redeveloped, it is important that roads and spaces are connected together with high quality streetscapes so visitors, shoppers and residents can move safely through the centre. And these aren't blocked off and resulting in dead-end streets or blank walls. Community engagement on the draft plan is proposed to start on the 30th of October and extend for a period of 6 weeks till the 11th of December. Council will invite residents and stakeholders to provide feedback on the plan through a number of workshops, drop-in sessions, street stalls, a community survey and through the Engage Burundara website. Following community engagement, officers will analyse the feedback and finalise the Camberwell Junction Structure and Place Plan for adoption next year. Therefore, the recommendation before you tonight is that the Urban Planning Delegated Committee resolve to endorse the draft Camberwell Junction Structure and Place Plan and proceed with community engagement for a period of 6 weeks, starting 30th of October. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Mr. Riz? Having heard from Mr. Cohen, we will then move to the people that have indicated to make a submission this evening. There's only one person that's indicated to make a submission this evening. Mrs. Montserrat Pesimenti, would you please proceed towards the horseshoe table? And just remind you that there's 3 minutes. If you could start with your name and your suburb, please.
My name is Montserrat Pesimenti. I live in Hawthorne, 69 Lisson Grove. I'm the secretary of the Glenferrie Traders Association. I haven't prepared anything for tonight, but I just wrote a few notes. I'm not against the place plan for Camberwell or any other of the shopping centres, but I would like to hear from David and Arturo a timeline, because here in front of me, I have a placemaking place plan signed by Cynthia Watson when she was a mayor, February 2020, only February, I think is the second, and it says on the 27th of July 2020 that the Glenferrie Place plan is scheduled for completion in early 2021. We all know that we had coronavirus, but we still haven't got in 2023, nearly at the end, a place plan for Glenferrie. And I think that the council is absolutely dumping Glenferrie Road into the bin. And honestly, as I said, I am all with Camberwell. I am really familiar with it. I lived 10 years of Camberwell Road.
Ms. Pesimenti, the purpose for these sessions is to comment on Camberwell. Could you please focus on that?
I am focusing on Camberwell, but I am just saying the differences. I think the councillors have to be aware that there are other plans, place plans in the council area that should have some sort of priority. Look, I mean, you telling me that by early 2024, it will be presented to you to vote for the implementation of the plan, of the Camberwell plan. When is the Glenferrie Road going to be presented to you? When you have denuded absolutely everything from there?
I'm going to
Yeah, I
allow,
know.
I'm going to allow the part about the Camberwell plan, and I will ask the officers to respond to that. And if, do you have any other
Thank
issues
you.
regarding the Camberwell plan?
Thank you.
Thank you.
But I would like a timetable.
Could you
if it's possible.
respond to
Thank
the
you.
Camberwell plan
I have a
timeline
few-
question, please? Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. Any questions, councillors? Ms. Pesmenti?
Thanks, Chair. Through you to Ms Pesmenti, I missed your original comment. Are you in support of the Camberwell Junction plan?
Yes, I'm in support of any place plan
Thank you.
that improves
Thank you, Mrs.
the
Pesmenti.
suburb. Yes, I live in the suburb. I pay the rate.
Thank
I've
you.
been here 51, 52 years.
Thank you, Ms. President. I will ask unless there are other questions from councillors, which I don't believe there are, I will ask the officers to respond on the timeline question. Thank you, Ms. Pesmenti. I beg your pardon? Okay. You may return to your seat as well, and the officers will respond to your question. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I didn't get what.
You may return to your seat, yeah, and the officers will respond by answering the question that you posed. Thank you very much.
Through you, Chair, and thank you for the feedback, Ms Pesmenti. In terms of timeline, for the Camberwell plan, the intention would be to bring in a plan to Council for adoption in early 2024. And the time horizon for the plan or the growth projections are up to 2051, and the implementation plan at the rear of the document looks at broad timeframes for project delivery, short, medium and long term. It's a bit of a different plan from the Glenferrie plan because it deals with structure planning matters as well, so it has to guide development for a longer period of time. In terms of, briefly, the Glenferrie plan is progressing, and we'll be looking at that in a reasonably short time frame. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Councillors, are there any questions for the officers? Councillor Biggar.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for that report. I just have a couple of questions. Sustainable living, I think, for instance, on page 8 or 6 of the report, you have the definition of it. I guess it just surprises me that it doesn't have, that definition doesn't seem to have a emphasis on some of the sustainable development and how to increase or how to decrease the heat island effect and some of the kinds of things that we generally think about when we're thinking about sustainability, at least environmental sustainability, and the use of the word. So I'm just a bit slightly confused because it seems to talk more about different kinds of diverse range of households. So I'm just wondering whether that is the intended interpretation, which is sustainable in the environmental sense, or a different sense of that word.
Sorry, Chair, could I just ask the page number? I didn't catch.
Page 8 or 6 of 119. The heading is sustainable living.
Through you, Chair. I think I can answer that generally. The structure and place plan does need to cover quite a range of matters. So this, I guess, part of the plan is primarily about providing a high-quality living environment for residents. So I guess its emphasis is on living, but we also wanted to capture that as new development occurs, it needs to achieve high standards of sustainability as well. But there's elements of it in there, but it's not, I don't think its focus is on sustainability. That is addressed elsewhere in the planning sort of framework through other means.
So does that mean that we will be, in this engagement with the community, will we be asking them their view on both of those issues, the types of housing and also our approach to environmental sustainability in the place plan?
Through you, Chair, yes, we'll be inviting, the community can provide us feedback on both of those. If there is a desire for a stronger emphasis on that in the plan, that's something we can address.
Chair, I may just add a broader comment here around the approach to structure plans. And structure plans need to guide planning outcomes for a location that are specific to that location. But what they aren't intended to do is repeat or change what's already in the planning scheme or proposed to be included in the planning scheme. Sustainability and achieving sustainable design outcomes is a fundamental and critical objective for this council.
Environmental?
Environmental sustainability, so environmental sustainable design and development outcomes is absolutely critical objective for this council, and that is being pursued as a high order action in conjunction with other councils to get amendments to the planning scheme to include that as a requirement. Now, that requirement will apply to all development in the municipality, including development within Camberwell and other locations throughout the municipality when that is achieved. Now, we have a broader objective as well of advocating with other councils for that to be included at a broader state level and not just for the 22 councils that are currently trying to make an amendment to the planning scheme to include those requirements.
Thank you, Mr Walker.
Thank you. I just have another question, if I might. It relates to, on page 1, there might be several other places it's mentioned as well, but on page 1 we talk about the, right up at the beginning, the overarching vision for Camberwell Junction below received 90% support from the community during consultation. Now, is that 90% relating to the 156 survey responses, or how are we measuring that 90%?
Through you, Chair, yes, that would be correct. It would be based on the number of responses.
Okay, I might make a comment on that later, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Biggar. Councillor Sinfield.
Thanks. Hopefully an easy question. Through you to officers, why 2051? 28 years from now seems like an awkward time frame.
Through you, Chair. It's based on the background data projections, the economic and population projections. I can't recall the exact reason, but I think it would have been probably 30 years from when the original analysis was done.
And that's based on the census data.
30 years from the 2021 census data.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Councillor Franco, followed by Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thanks. My question relates to page 110 and 111 relating to Reserve Road in Camberwell. I'd like to understand why officers haven't been more ambitious in relation to Reserve Road, Camberwell. It is simply shown as a pedestrian-friendly street, yet there is tremendous opportunity there to create green open space, to close the road, knowing that green open space is the #1 issue we've been continually reminded by our community that they want, and all the connections only, like the increased enhanced amenities, relate to Camberwell Library and the Camberwell and our council facilities, but not looking across the road at Camberwell Primary School. Is there any reason we've overlooked that?
Through you, Chair. I wouldn't say we've overlooked the Reserve Road. There is a lot of pedestrian movements along the road, so we've just recognised, whilst retaining its connectivity function, that there's a lot of pedestrian movements across that road, so there's an opportunity to improve the environment and safety for pedestrians.
But it doesn't say anywhere in the current draft those comments that you've just made in relation to improving pedestrian amenity there.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, and that's probably reflective of many elements of the plan. There's so many different, streets and spaces and issues. We tend to deal with them at a reasonably high level, but obviously if the community has strong feedback around that, issue, they can provide it through to us.
There's also a reference to Camberwell Primary School and the initiatives being pursued there in terms of the creation of new open space, yet there's no reference at all to repeated requests from the primary school to look at the creation of additional open space there. Is there any reason that's been omitted and overlooked?
Could you please? Yes.
I think I'd have to clarify the question, Chair. The green space is recognised in the plan?
The new green space currently being created is, but not the existing requests from the school to look at additional green space and closures of Reserve Road to enhance the amenity and quantity of open space as a whole and facilitate improved pedestrian amenity, as well as the creation of new open space. It's simply overlooked in the current draft.
Thanks, Chair. The current structure plan, as it deals with the Civic Centre, Camberwell Primary School and Reserve Road, as presented, is consistent with the long-held position of this council around the planning for that area. So what you see reflected in that plan is an acknowledgement of changes happening at Camberwell Primary in terms of additional spaces and developments underway. It's setting a framework and opportunity for future outcomes around the Civic Centre, in particular in the vicinity of the library, in the spaces and public spaces in that location. And it's also acknowledging and recognising the ongoing role for Reserve Road as a through traffic street, but with opportunities to improve the pedestrian environment. And that's what's before you this evening is a draft plan that acknowledges that framework and position held by this council around that vicinity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Walker, I think it was a response that you made to Councillor Bigger with regard to environmental sustainability issues. So I've just noticed in the officer report, .8, it talks about social and environmental issues, so it touches on it there. But in the actual document that is proposed to go to consultation, on page 24 of the actual document, not of the report, item 5 talks about sustainability, architecture and the importance of. So I don't know whether there's an opportunity to further enhance that or whether or not you feel that adequately covers it. But I do agree that our community, when they look at this document, they'll be very concerned about the sustainability of design, but obviously also the urban environment as well. Thank you.
Councillor Hollingsworth, so I didn't sort of, what is the precise question?
Whether or not .5 in the actual report, so it's page 24 on the report, talks about sustainability in architecture and built form, and whether or not there's a capacity to further expand on that to cover what Councillor Bigger referred to.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Mr. Walker.
Thanks, Chair. And I think it's, again, going back to my earlier comments around the role and function of the structure plan and the way that it needs to be specific to the location. And I think the reference that you're making to that component of the structure plan is acknowledging that sustainability and sustainable design outcomes may influence the architecture and design approach to particularly larger buildings in the activity centre. So it's an acknowledgement and linking to this as a specific place, but in our view, that is sufficient on the sustainability element, given the other components that are already included and we intend to include within the planning scheme to guide development outcomes. Having said that, of course, through the exhibition phase, we will receive comments, we will review those comments, and we will reflect upon the plan and any adjustments that might need to be made in the final version.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. We've got Councillor Gillies, followed by Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair. Just to advise that I'm prepared to move a motion when the time is ready.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbs. I think it might be ready. Councillor Sinfield, are you preparing to second it?
I'm happy to, but no, apologies, I forgot to ask a question.
Sure, please.
And that is just in relation to the maps that appear on page 50, 51, 52, 59, 60 and various places throughout the document. And for reference of our amalgamated papers, that's page 70 onwards. All of those maps have been rotated, and I wonder whether officers might reconsider how they depict that. It's not something that would cause me to hesitate in seconding this or in sending it out for community consultation. I just find it really awkward for the community to understand where those maps have been oriented and Burke Road is appearing to run east-west instead of north-south.
Through you, Chair. We did deliberate on this for a while. It's quite difficult to display the area with, it's a large area, so if you zoom out too far, then you lose the detail. And if it's directly north-south, to capture the entire precinct on one page, you have to zoom out quite a way. So we trialled a few different approaches, and this was our most pragmatic solution. It's more for those diagrammatic AXO images, whereas the more detailed plans, flat plans, are north orientated.
Perhaps a landscape orientation could be considered for the whole document.
I can confirm that a note is being added in the version of this document that will be going to community engagement where a plan has been rotated, just for clarity.
Not all of them, but I'll happy to take that offline, Arturo.
That sounds wise. Thank you. Back to you, Councillor Gillies. The time to move the motion is right now.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation, please, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. And I think I've got Councillor Thompson.
Absent of the Mayor putting a light on, I'm happy to second.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Are there any councillors opposed to this? Councillor Franco is opposed to this motion. Councillor Gillies, do you like to speak to your motion?
I might wait until debate. I might, if that's all right with you, Chair.
I'm comfortable with that. Councillor Thompson, would you want to wait as well to reserve your rights?
No, I'm happy to speak now, Chair. Thank you for this. What I'd probably say from the outset, there's been a lot of thought and consideration at a strategic level, pretty much encompassing every aspect of Council's operations, from our planning team, our strategic planning team, our parks and gardens, our community economic development, through to even, you know, general wellness of community expectations in an environment like this. So there's been a lot of consideration that's gone into the preparation of this report. Obviously, we're putting it out for feedback. We always welcome feedback from our community. This may not be the perfect plan, and the community might find some areas where it could be improved upon, but that's the purpose for community feedback. But from a councillor perspective, and having been on the subcommittee that's been involved in the preparation of this, this is a very, very important bit of strategic work that will preserve a sustainable community, which I'll talk in terms of the community itself, a diverse community, which will provide, you know, long-term affordable housing for those that need it close to the areas that they work, as well as a diversity of age as well. It'll allow for growth within an area that in the city of Boroondara is appropriate for growth. And that in return actually protects the suburbs where growth is probably should be restricted in many respects. So it's close to public transport, it's close to open space. We're always in dire need of more open space, and maybe the opportunities that will come out of future developments will actually provide for that within the footprints that they've got. I look forward to seeing green buildings in a sustainable community, and I hope that the ward councillor who's moved this will be around in 2051 to actually see it come to fruition, on council that is. But I'm happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Franco.
Thank you. I echo the words of Councillor Thompson. I think it's a fabulous piece of work. My concern relates to one small aspect. I've also been involved in the advisory committee that's overseen the work, and I'm very impressed with all aspects of the work that's gone into it. And I do recognise the importance of the plan in the current context of the state government's decisions that the director has outlined at the outset. My concern relates to one small aspect, and it relates to the potential missed opportunities in the current plan, and I think this could come through in the public consultation, so I think there's still merit in that. And I understand that council officers have erred in following adherence to the past 3 council resolutions. I think they've been in the recent years in relation to Reserve Road and an opposition to looking at the creation of more open space. But I think sometimes, whilst these past council resolutions exist, there is opportunity to review issues anew. And I understand that it's hard for officers given existing council resolutions, but in the context that additional green open space is being created in the precinct, and not simply looking at the opportunities for improving the connections of that green open space to the civic council facilities, to the existing parkland, but looking across more broadly within that whole precinct that is a key component of the civic centre, and looking at connecting other opportunities for open space, including the primary school and further down to Lower Reserve, and creating a richer and much fuller experience for the wider community in Camberwell Junction, which in many years to come will have high density living and an even greater demand for public open space and green open space. So look, I very strongly support going out to public consultation. My concerns relate to this aspect. I'm also concerned about the issue that Councillor Bigger raised, but I'm sure she'll talk to that. And I think these things can come through in the public consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Councillor Bigger.
Yes, thank you. I am also, like the other councillors, very happy to support this officer's recommendation tonight. My main, I just want to make 2 points. One does relate to how we use that term and how we think about sustainability, and just that we're very clear about that in our language, because I think there is potential for misunderstanding, and I think both kinds of sustainability are important, but they're different, and it just would be important, I think, that we clarify that. Secondly, we are going out for consultation, I believe, to hear what the community thinks and to accept what they think, and to say, here's what we think, now you tell us what you think in response. I am concerned about going out and within the first paragraph saying 90% of the people who've seen this already think our vision is great, when it's only 156 people. I don't think that puts us in a very good light. And I think that I understand, you know, the thinking behind it, and I know that we hope that the community shares our vision. But I think that if we're true to the approach to consultation, then we should, it's fine to say this is what council thinks is good, but I don't think we've done the proper community consultation yet, which is why we're about to do it now. And I don't think we should preempt that by suggesting that the community already is on board with this. So that would be my feedback. A small sentence to change, and I think it would show that we're open and that we're taking this, we're really serious about community consultation, which I believe we are, and I think it is probably a more balanced approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. There have been no other councillors seeking. Oh, Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. I know I've already spoken once, so I'll be just brief. I do support and applaud this proposal as such to go to consultation. I've just noticed on page 88 of the report, there's a photograph there of the Camberwell Library forecourt, and I believe it's an out-of-date photo, that there's been significant change to this area, and I'd just like to suggest that that photo be replaced with a current photo. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. There be no further councillors seeking to speak. I'll return back to the mover, Councillor Gillies. Would you like to address?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. And I thank my colleagues for their remarks too, which I know officers, some of these remarks have been discussed and debated internally, but I think that's healthy conversation to have them aired here too. So I thank them for that input. This really is a robust, comprehensive, strategic plan. Let's keep our focus on the word strategic. And it's the result of nearly 2 years of demographic research, traffic surveys, heritage and urban design reviews, infrastructure analysis, and much more. It's an extensive, thorough project plan for which I congratulate and thank the officers. There's been a lot of interdepartmental communication and consideration to this too, so I thank everybody who's been involved. Establishing this plan is even more pertinent at this time with the state government's potential planning reforms naming Camberwell Junction as a targeted site. Once fully endorsed by Council, and this of course is a step on that journey, but once fully endorsed, this plan will provide clear frameworks to accommodating population growth whilst facilitating the creation of new public amenities like the Market Plaza. It's setting the precinct up with a sound, evidenced, achievable plan. It's not meant to be detail in every corner of the precincts. That's not the plan, it's a strategic plan. So the next step is community consultation, for which I commend this motion to my colleagues. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. I will then now put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? The motion's declared carried. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, officers, for the good work, and thank you everyone in the gallery that contributed.
Sorry, Chair, was there an abstention to that, or was there an opposition? Abstention?
There was abstention.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Thank you for that. We now move to the next item on the agenda, which is 115 to 2133 Cotham Road, Kew. This report will be presented by Mr. Daniel Murphy. Mr. Murphy, thank you.
Through you, Chair. The purpose of officers reporting this application to the Urban Planning Delegated Committee is to consider the in-principle agreement reached by all parties to the VCAT appeal in application PA 230031, which concerns the land at 115 to 133 Cotham Road in Kew. By way of background, on the 29th of May 2023, Council resolved to refuse to amend the existing planning permit. The grounds of refusal are set out in the Planning Officer's report for this meeting. The decision has since been appealed to VCAT by the permit applicant. At the compulsory conference held on the 12th September 2023, all parties, the council officers, the permit applicant and the objectors, reached an in-principle agreement to settle the matter via consent and subject to conditions outlined in the recommendation section of the Planning Officer's report. The key changes agreed upon it by all parties and which differ from the application presented to UPDC previously are noted in the Planning Officer's report and can be broadly summarised as a reduction in the maximum number of patrons to the restaurant and bar to 220, a reduction in the operating hours of the restaurant and bar, reinstatement of existing garden bed adjacent to the western boundary of the site, proposed restaurant and bar entrances relocated to the Cotham Road site frontage, the entrance to the proposed residential hotel relocated to the internal port cochere, and finally, additional conditions relating to the car parking management plan, waste management plan, and noise and amenity action plan. In officers' opinion, the suite of changes proposed by the in-principle agreement overcomes the shortcomings of the application identified by Council's grounds of refusal in respect of layout concerns and off-site amenity impacts on adjoining properties. Importantly, the proposed changes have been agreed by all parties to the VCAT appeal who were present at the compulsory conference on 12th of September. Finally, for Councillors' information, following discussions between Council's Planning Investigations Officer and the permit applicant, officers inspected the site on 11th of September, which confirmed that directional signage and automatic gate timers have been installed at the entrance of the basement car park on Ridgeway Avenue in accordance with the current endorsed car parking management plan. Officer recommendation is that the Urban Planning Delegated Committee resolve to advise VCAT and the parties that Council formally agrees to the in-principle agreement reached at the compulsory conference on 12th of September 2023, subject to the amended planning permit conditions outlined in the Officer's recommendations section of the Officer's report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Murphy. We have one speaker wishing to speak this evening, Ms Anna Barclay. If you could approach the horseshoe table, Ms Barclay. Thank you so much. If you could start with your name and postcode and your... Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors. My name's Anna Barclay. I'm from Urbis. We're representing the applicant. We were here a little while ago in May. I'll keep it brief. Just to support the officer's recommendation, there was a lengthy compulsory conference. I think it went for most of the day between the residents and the permit applicant. They've reached what I think is a good outcome. The changes before you that have been presented tonight focus on improvements to the residential side street, moving the entrance away from the Ridgeway Avenue and further into the site, reducing some of the hours and patron numbers that's already been discussed, and also moving some of the outdoor seating, changing the hours for outdoor seating to limit that. And generally the changes represent a better outcome for the more sensitive residential interface on Ridgeway Avenue, and we hope that you support the changes and we can avoid a VCAT hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Barclay. Councillor Park.
Thank you, Chair. Ms Barclay, I haven't had to turn my mind to this in the past because it was a refusal, but I noticed that the medical centre is said to be limited to not more than 5 practitioners, but unfortunately, practitioners is as particular as this gets. My view is that it should be described as health practitioners. Do you expect that the applicant would have any difficulty with the clarification or by inserting health before practitioners?
I doubt they'd have an issue. However, that's not before council or VCAT. That the medical centre part of this application is not what's being amended. It's only the restaurant and bar, so that's not. It would need to form part of a separate application.
Yep, I was going to ask officers, but because you were present, I thought I'd put that forward. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. There've been no further questions. I return to the gallery. Thank you very much, Ms Barclay. Return to the office for any matters arising out of this. Councillors, are there any questions for the officers?
So then I'll ask that question of officers. Are we unable to address that in any way, shape or form? Because there's a difference whether that term is interpreted as health practitioners or medical practitioners, and I think it's unfortunate that the ambiguity's in there.
Through you, Chair. It's not a matter before the council or before the tribunal. It doesn't form part of the current amendment application.
I just ask that officers take that on board, because no doubt that came from officers in the very first place, and now we're stuck with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Park. Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to officers. My question's in relation to the liquor licence adjustments. As reflected on page 123 of the papers in front of us, the second last paragraph, the first of the 4 bullet points there under liquor licence reflects various different parameters. For example, 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Sunday to Wednesday, 7 a.m. to midnight Thursday, and 7 a.m. to 1 a.m. Friday to Sunday, therefore accounting for different hours on a Sunday twice. Could officers please provide some clarification as to what the liquor licence will reflect on a Sunday?
Mr. Murphy, thank you.
Through you, Chair. You are indeed correct, Councillor. It is a typo in the report. The agreed hours of operation for the restaurant and bar 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Sunday to Wednesday inclusive, 7 a.m. to 12 midnight on Thursday, and 7 a.m. to 1 a.m. the following day on Friday to Saturday inclusive.
Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair. So does this now need to be adjusted in the resolution before us this evening, or is that in the finer detail that can go through?
Again, through you, Chair. The resolution does not contain the typo, but only the officer report section.
So we can address an administrative change in the report.
Through yourself, Chair, condition 35 in the recommendation is correct and correctly reflects the agreed hours at the mediation, and therefore there's no need to make any change to the recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. Councillor Park.
In the same spirit of things, and 42D, is it coherent where it needs to be, or is it also read available at during the first line of 42D? Presumably the at is extraneous.
I think it just means during.
Again, through yourself, Chair, that's correct. That can be a minor correction to the permit, and we can clarify that.
Could we? Yeah, struck off. Thank you for that. Thanks, Councillor Park. I am seeking a mover. Councillor Sinfield.
I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. And Councillor Watson.
Happy to second the motion.
Thank you. Are there anybody opposed to this? There be no opposition. Councillor Sinfield, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Chair, and I note that this application is in fact within your ward, but it's a little awkward to move something from the Chair. So I'm pleased to move this on your behalf, and we have spoken today and resolved that the officer's recommendation was something that satisfied both of us. I'm pleased that the applicant has worked with the community through VCAT and that the sensitive interface to Ridgeway Avenue has been acknowledged and appropriate adjustments made. I think everything else is covered within the report, and I thank officers for working through this process. A mediated outcome, I think, has reached the result that has not unfairly disadvantaged those residents living within close proximity to this business area of Cotham Village, while still enabling the village and local economy there to thrive and to grow. At the moment, the current interface with the public realm is quite a cold one, and I welcome the adjustments that have been made to make this a little bit more inviting, and I commend the officer's recommendation to my colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. Do you wish to say any words, Councillor Watson? I don't believe so. Look, I'll just say a couple of words about this. Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. You reflected everything that I wish to say. I think what I could say is thank you to the community. Thank you also to the applicant for coming together in a process where obviously we reached an outcome that everybody was comfortable with in the end. A compromise was reached, and Councillor Sinfield said that very well, both for the community and the local economy, and thank for the officers and the hard work that you put into it as well. Now I will put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We now move to item 3.3, the Mont Iris Estate and Environs Heritage Precinct Review. This item will be presented by Mr. Costello. Thank you, Mr. Costello.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Good evening, councillors, officers and attendees. This report is to inform the Urban Planning Delegated Committee of the outcomes of public exhibition of Amendment C394 relating to the Mont Iris Estate and Environs Precinct peer review. This amendment seeks to implement the recommendations of the Mont Iris Estate and Environs Precinct peer review prepared by GJM Heritage by including 3 precincts and 2 individually significant properties in the heritage overlay on a permanent basis. The amendment was publicly exhibited from 15th of June to 27th of July of this year. 24 submissions were received, including 9 supporting submissions, 4 partially supporting submissions and 11 opposing submissions. The key issues raised have been summarised in the report, and further detail is within the summary table contained in attachment 1 of the report. As part of the exhibition process, an inconsistency was identified in the planning scheme amendment documents relating to the property at 33 Tower Hill Road, Glen Iris. The property is identified as a contributory graded property to the Tower Hill Estate Precinct and is included in the exhibited precinct citation. However, the property is not included in the exhibited planning scheme map prepared by the Department of Transport and Planning. The property is also not included in the interim heritage overlay for the precinct. No submission was received from the property owner through the public exhibition process, and officers have undertaken a targeted mail out to that property owner prior to this meeting. Officers have written to the property owner, as I've said, in advance of the meeting, noting the issue and providing an opportunity for a further submission. Officers will seek to have the matter resolved at a panel hearing should the UPDC resolve to progress the amendment. Officers recommend the UPDC resolve to request the Minister for Planning to appoint an independent planning panel and to refer all submissions to a panel for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Costello. We have 4 residents that seek to speak this evening. I will start first by calling Mr. Kappas. Could you please proceed to the horseshoe table and just remind you that you have 3 minutes, and if you could start with your name and suburb.
Thanks very much, councillors. I'll close up. My apologies. Thanks very much for your time. I have been liaising with my ward member.
Could you move closer to the microphone, please?
Sorry.
That's all right.
Quite simply, again, thank you for your time. I do have a couple of objections, and I have informed Gary in regards to my concerns. And to put it mildly, I know I'm not an expert in the heritage overlays. However, I'd like to just present. I know that a picture's been sent to the councillors outside, and I just wanted to highlight the actual garage itself has been marked as contributory to the overlay of the property. Now, that roller door, the Black & Decker roller door there, I don't know how that can come anywhere near to being contributory. But again, I'm not an expert in this area. That's why I've got an expert waiting behind me to speak on my behalf. I forgot to mention my name's Nicholas Capes, and I'm a resident at 24 Hillcrest Road, Glen Iris, and 20 Munro Avenue happens to be our investment property, our super fund basically for my wife and I, and we're hoping to retire there one day by developing it. So from my perspective, I just want to ask the council to look at common sense and listen to my advisor if you could, and I'm hoping that I get some sort of resolution that is acceptable to everyone, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Capps. I will call upon then on Mr. George Stenos. Could you please proceed with your name and suburb? I guess we know who you are, but just for the record.
My name's George Stenos, and I don't reside in the area. My father does have a family home in Ashburton, so I know the area very well. My client, they're not opposed to the scheme in general, and they believe that there are certain houses that are of heritage importance and they deserve to be in a heritage overlay. This particular home, though, has nothing significant historically, architecturally, or even the way it's built. It's all minimalistic. The garage has been stipulated by the heritage architects. They sort of fall short because they don't say why it's contributory. About the garage and the fence. The fence isn't even original and it's had some repairs in the past and it's in disrepair now. The foundations have subsided and the fence is actually leaning. So it will have to be replaced. Just from my experience, the contributory aspects of the garage and the fence, I'm only guessing because it wasn't outlined in the heritage report. I would suspect that the setback would be important for the garage and the height of the fence would be also contributory to the overall heritage overlay. But you have things and in town planning that already look at those aspects, and my clients wouldn't say no if they were asked to abide by these setbacks or heights in a new design. So we agree that there are houses in the area that are good and they should be on the overlay and that should go forward because it's a great area and that should be retained. But in this particular case, there's nothing there of any significance as far as I'm concerned, as far as building or even architecture. That's about all I can say.
Thank you, Mr. Stanos. You finished well within your time. Appreciate that. Councillors, are there any questions for Mr. Stanos? Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, Mr. Stanos. You've said a few times this particular property, but I don't know which property you're referring to. What's
it's
the
at
address?
20 Munro Avenue in Ashburton.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. There be no further questions. You may return to the gallery. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker this evening is Mr. Thuranga Wirakodi. Mr. Wirakodi.
Chair, could officers just indicate what page we'd find that last property?
I'm actually talking on behalf of my husband.
Okay, thank you so much. Just one second, we've got a question before you can continue. Mr. Costello?
Through yourself, Chair, we may need to come back to you at the end of the next speaker, if that's okay, and just clarify the exact page.
With your indulgence, Chair, just so that the benefit for councillors, Mr. Stanos is an architect representing our first presenter, Mr. Kappas, and I circulated a heritage report or a citation from him earlier this evening.
Was that by email?
That was via email, and at both properties, both first and second presenter relate to 20 Munro Street.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I beg your pardon. I called you Mister. That's what I had on the sheet here. So
It's actually Miss Peshni Cabral.
thank you so much. We'll correct that, but I was going according to the sheet. So, Mr. Wirakodi is your husband.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Please, begin with your name and suburb. Thank you.
Yes, it's Peshni Cabral, and I actually reside in Glen Waverley, but we've just recently purchased a property on Dent Street in Glen Iris.
Thank you.
So number 14. In particular, I'm fairly new to this, so I guess what I wanted to raise was the inflexibility that comes with a heritage overlay, in particular challenging repurposing the actual building for environmental efficiencies, in particular solar panels and anything that could be environmentally beneficial. I noted on page 162 of the document that environmental matters are not considered as part of the criteria. and it's best to address through a planning permit application. This seems quite administratively burdening, where you have to really understand what's involved. So I guess my view on this is that I'm partial to a no on the heritage overlay, but I obviously wanted to get more information about that particular aspect.
Thank you for your presentation. Councillors, there are no questions. You may return to the gallery. Thank you very much. Our last speaker this evening is Mr. Greg Price. Mr. Price, could you proceed to the horseshoe table? Begin with your name and suburb. Thank you. You have 3 minutes. You know the rules.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. My name is Greg Price from Glen Iris. I request that 12 Dent Street be excluded as per previous council resolutions, as it's been rebuilt and is still in the final stages of the project. The property doesn't contribute to heritage in any way, and introducing heritage would require permits for all works, which includes landscaping, fencing, security systems, solar panels and the like, which are very expensive and time-consuming while serving no purpose in this instance and just taking up people's time. As was found by the previous panel hearings considering the Mont Iris estate, plus the associated UPDC meetings, the southern and western ends of the area, which cover Dent Street precinct, is still problematic due to the lack of coherency and other issues. Nothing new has been uncovered by the latest study, and in fact more was learned by talking to neighbours, which has revealed more extensive modifications to some of the properties in the precinct. There are no significant properties in the precinct, and it's not even contiguous, and only includes one side of the street and a number of sections of that. The heritage consultants also included the recommendation to require planning permits for solar panels, despite the precinct facing south and panels only having a 20 to 30 year lifetime. Hence they require periodic replacement. The section of Dent Street from Tower Hill to Munro, which is 62 to 74 for your reference, has only one replaced property and was excluded from the precinct. Additionally, the houses at 72 and 74 were excluded despite being original, and the rest of the block being part of HO 227, as in the existing heritage overlay covering the eastern end. So I request that you, exclude my property and probably consider the Dent Street precinct. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Price. You finished well within your time. Councillor Thompson, your question, Mr. Price.
Thanks, Mr. Price. Obviously, there's been a lot of history over the years with regards to your property. What works are remaining outstanding that haven't been completed at this point in time?
All of the fencing, all of the landscaping, solar panels, the security system. I'm trying to think what else is visible from the front there. That's the main. So basically things that aren't covered by the original building permit, as in the house construction.
So fencing, landscaping...
security, solar.
Security and solar. Now, obviously, your principal facade's facing south.
Correct.
So would you be considering solar on the southern facade?
No, but the problem is and this is where, hairs can be split. The planning scheme talks about visible surfaces, and the east and west. East and west are where I'll be putting the panels, because the north side's been taken by the hot water panels, and hence there's visibility. And I think the planning scheme really doesn't talk. I think you still require a permit even if it's non-visible.
Yep. I might put that on notice for the officers to respond to those 4 items that have been identified. Thanks, Mr. Price.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you.
Councillor Franco, you have a question for Mr. Price?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Price, you referred to past council resolutions in relation to 12 Dent Street. Do you have a recollection, or can you remind me and other councillors what those resolutions were? I was trying to look this up without success.
At the equivalent meeting, when it was recommended to go to a panel hearing last time, council resolved to exclude my property specifically. That was a resolution, and that went to the panel.
Is that at the time when we had the much bigger proposed heritage precinct?
Yes.
Or overlay?
That was the larger Mont Iris, the original Mont Iris scheme, where essentially it's predominantly the eastern end and then thins out, and it was more of a U shape, but I was still down in that bottom corner.
What arguments did you advance at the time? I'm trying to understand what councils, and whether it was this elected council. I presume I was on the council along with my colleagues here, but the years go by. Do you recall what the arguments that you presented or your representatives presented?
To be honest, I don't recall, because there were various meetings with council officers and councillors prior to it.
But we resolved to remove it from the proposed heritage overlay that was referred to the panel at the time.
Correct. So when it went to the panel hearing, it was interesting. The lawyers advanced the non-amended version, but council at the meeting resolved to exclude my property. So, and I had to go and correct that at the panel hearing that council had resolved, and the lawyers for council apologised.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Are you finished with your questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. With your indulgence, just one further question, just to the back of Councillor Franco's. It's not a matter for tonight's consideration, it's actually a different estate, but just for the purpose of clarity for colleagues, when your property was removed by the former council, at what stage of construction were you?
Now you're stretching my memory here on dates. I'm trying to recall whether it was in construction. Like we definitely signed contracts, because that was the trigger for the original issue. But I can't remember what. I'd need to go and look up the dates I've got.
And I think that was the reason why that was removed at that time. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. There be no further questions. Mr. Price, you may return to the gallery. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, move to the officers. There have been some issues that we have.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, in relation to 20 Munro Avenue, it's a contributory building. The properties in that area are generally late interwar. The response to submissions, and I refer to Councillor Park's question previously, that is page 166, submission 12, that deals with that property. It makes the point that the structure of the garage contributes. It acknowledges that it's got a roller door on it that is not of heritage value. The position we would take to any panel would be that the building is primarily contributory. There is no individually significant buildings in this precinct. They're all contributory. So the owner is free to present to the panel in relation to the garage. Our position will be that it's a contributory element to the property, just like most garages in that area are. In relation to 14 Dent Street, the solar panels, as suggested, would be to the rear of the building. That property, again, is contributory to that particular precinct. That would be the position we would take to a future panel hearing. With respect to 12 Dent Street, GJM in their peer review have implemented the recommendations of the panel at the time of the older, larger precinct, where the panel stated in their report that part of any future review that if 12 Dent Street was to be considered for inclusion in heritage overlay, it should be graded non-contributory. That reflects the fact that at the time the building had been legally demolished. So the resolution in May of 2022 relates to the interim heritage control, which was to exclude the property from the interim heritage overlay, and that was done. And that is still the case, that it's no longer an interim heritage overlay. But when we consider the Dent Street precinct from the perspective of including it in a permanent heritage overlay, that property is simply a non-contributory building as part of a wider area. And that's why it's been included. It's recognised that it has no heritage value, and on that basis, it's included because it's just part of a wider linear precinct. That's all I have to say on 12 Dent Street.
Thank you, Mr. Costello. Councillors, the questions for the officers? Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, through you, Chair. Sorry, I'm not sure officers actually addressed the concerns of Mr. Price just recently with regards to whether or not, if the property has got a non-contributory nature over it, what's the substantial difference in relation to whether he requires a planning permit or not for fencing, landscaping, security and solar in this? And maybe if officers could just describe what implications it has with or without a non-contributory nature.
So that's the question, Councillor Thompson. What are the differences?
What's the difference?
Between,
Through you, Chair. With respect to solar panels, a non-contributory building does not have heritage value. It's included in the heritage overlay simply on the basis that if the property is to ever be demolished, that whatever is to be built in its place respects the fact that it's part of a wider area. However, it's acknowledged that the building is only recently constructed. So if the property owner was to demolish a recently constructed building, they would need to develop a building that is designed in a way that reflects the fact that it's part of a linear area. In relation to solar panels, that is an automatic trigger in any heritage overlay from a recent point in time when the Minister included an element in the heritage overlay schedule to trigger a need for a planning permit for solar panels. Obviously, the submitter and the property owner would not be seeking to install those solar panels in the principal visible roof form. The principal visible roof form is south-facing. The secondary elements are north, east and west. So those would have a different, I guess, a lesser level of assessment compared to if they were put on the principal visible roof form. In any case, the building does not have heritage value. So, yeah, it would be given that level of assessment under Council's heritage policy.
Thank you. And just with regards to, obviously the interim heritage overlay excludes the number 12 Dent Street. Did what we put out for exhibition, is that consistent with what we're considering tonight?
The property, through your chair, the property was exhibited as a non-contributory property within the precinct.
Yep.
And it's not an interim heritage overlay on the basis that it wasn't previously in an interim heritage overlay. Therefore, the resolution at the time was to delete any interim heritage overlays. The reality was it wasn't in one anyway. So it's not an interim, but it's proposed for a permanent with a non-contributory grading.
Yep. And just one further question, just to divert to 20 Munro Street. With similar heritage overlays with contributory properties with small carports, when applicants have put forward a proposal under a planning in a heritage overlay, have council officers ever considered the removal of those if it's justified as such? And just to further to that, does it actually diminish the value of that property?
Through your chair, it would be. It's one element. Primarily, that we're interested in protecting the principal building, which is the house. And if there was justification, or if the building was, if the carport was designed, or a new garage was designed appropriately, it could be removed. But it's just that the citation simply recognises the added component of a garage, as most interwall buildings would have.
So it's not without possibility that could be removed, subject to the justification.
Correct.
Thanks, Chair, and I'll foreshadow a motion in due course.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Franco, and followed by Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions following on from Councillor Thompson's questions. In relation to 12 Dent Street, it's not on the interim overlay. Was it, and Mr Price referred to council decisions, was it a decision of this council to include 12 Dent Street in what went out for public exhibition?
That's correct. It was included, it was exhibited as being in the precinct. It's just that the application of the interim heritage control, so in support of that precinct, that interim wasn't applied.
Even if they're proposed to be located on a non-primary visible roof frontage. So if it's at the rear, like I say in the case of 12 Dent Street, if were Mr Price to seek to put panels on his north roof, would that require a permit?
Through you, Chair, I don't believe it does. In any case, it would be constructed it wouldn't be on the principal visible route form.
I'm happy to get clarification on that at another time if it's not to officers' fingertips because it's not immediately relevant. In relation to 20 Munro, I have a question as well. I've brought up the page that Councillor Park asked about on 167. I don't know how to find it, where it shows an arrow pointing to the garage in question. My question is, the garage at 20 Munro, as shown, is at the front of the property as opposed to being set back as per the various neighbours' ones. And yet it's suggested that it's original. I wonder, is it common, and I'm not being an expert in this area, for garages of the time to be built in that location rather than being set back at the block as is typical of the neighbouring properties?
Through you, Chair. That arrow does appear to point to the carport, and the commentary in that table states that the garage appears to be original, albeit with a later roller door added. So, and it is evident in the 1945 aerial image of the house. So, on some interwar buildings, some interwar houses, you may find the garage as an outbuilding towards the back of the site. Other times it will be added alongside and adjoining the front wall of the building, as it is in this particular case. Some interwar subdivisions they built with small garages as outbuildings. In this case, it's just attached to the building.
Okay, and just again to clarify, should the heritage overlay proceed, the applicant can still apply to modify that garage or remove it? Yes, thanks.
Mr Walker wishes to say a few words. Clarification.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to clarify in regard to solar facilities and what the heritage overlay actually says. So the heritage overlay says that a planning permit will be required for solar energy system attached to a building that primarily services the land on which it is situated if the system is visible from a street other than a lane or public park, and if the schedule to this overlay specifies the heritage place as one that where solar energy system controls apply. So if it doesn't meet that test, so it's not visible from the street or a public park or lane, then a planning permit is not required.
Okay. Thank you, Mr Walker. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr Chair. My question's with regard to the third presenter. I think the lady's surname was Peschel, Miss Peschel, where she mentioned recently purchased a property in this estate, and she is seeking more information about what constraints would be on a heritage home in the estate. So I just wanted to ask if the officers could perhaps reach out to her, if you've got the email address, and just at some stage have a conversation to help assist her with her inquiries. And the only other inclusion to my question was if we could also refer Ms Patel to our website where it talks about planning and building and retaining neighbourhood character, and there's some information about heritage home extensions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. I'm sure the officers can reach out. We've exhausted questions for the officers and councillors. Councillor Thompson, you foreshadowed a motion. This will be the time to...
Thanks, Chair. I'm going to test the officers' recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I'm seeking a seconder. Councillor Franco.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Are there anyone opposed to this motion? There being no opposition, Councillor Thompson, do you wish to speak to your
I
motion?
do, and thank you, Chair. And I'd like to firstly start by thanking our presenters this evening. A number of them have been through this. This is the second iteration, and I'm sure quite a few have got grey hairs as a result of the first iteration. So my apologies to them. As what's been foreshadowed, the original heritage overlay, which is some 3 times the size of this, was fragmented. It was referred off to the independent planning panel, and the independent panel gave us the frank advice that we should abandon it and actually look for more contiguous, smaller precincts, which is what the officers have embarked on, and we agreed to that approach in May of last year. With that said, having driven the streets, what's actually before us is really where we should have probably started with a few years ago, and it's just the nature of going through and protecting heritage that we've arrived at this point. What I would say to the presenters, particularly is, let's start with, say, 20 Munro Street, with consideration to that carport extension. The owner of that property sought the advice of an architect, and they've given us a presentation. The independent planning panels is an appropriate area to actually present that to that panel. They're not fearful in giving us the advice as to whether or not we've got it right or wrong. They have done so previously on this very precinct. So I'd recommend favouring a critique of the heritage merits of that particular building when it gets to the planning panel for consideration. So for Mr Stanos, who's representing Mr Capes, to do so at the independent panel would be advantageous. With regards to number 12 Dent Street, this has always been a challenge, this property, and there were some considerations made by this council previously to alleviate the owner of that property effectively to go ahead and build their family home. That property is now, as we've heard tonight, absent of fencing, landscaping, solar and security is complete. It sits as a non-contributory property. There are only very minor impacts in relation to it sitting within a precinct as if it wasn't sitting in a precinct. And I think that I know Mr Price may not necessarily agree with us, but he's actually landed in a very good position given the 5 years of turmoil as to where it all started. And I think I've got to acknowledge that that has been a stress on his life and his family's life, but he's got a beautiful property now that he can have his family grow into. And I think the inclusion of this now in that precinct, it's immaterial in terms of what the possibilities he's got for that property as it is non-contributory. But with all of that said, our next step is the independent planning panel. That's where presentations from residents can actually get to that point. And we will receive the feedback from the independent planning panel in due course. So I thank the officers for doing the work that they've done, and I recommend this to colleagues.
Thank you for your thought-out comments, Councillor Thompson. There have been opposition, but Councillor Frank, being this a big issue, could you...
I'll make a few brief words. Look, I endorse everything that Councillor Thompson has said, and I won't repeat everything. And I think there's been some good work done here, but just on the issue, I'll take the opportunity to make a comment about solar panels. I always do. I do have reservations about the approach we take in relation to solar panels.
Relevant to this issue, that?
Well, it is. As we expand our heritage overlays across the municipality and we have restrictions in relation to the rollout of solar panels, it does concern me. So I weigh up as a policy maker and as a decision maker, you know, a support for heritage, but equally, you know, I'm pained by our restrictions as we want greater use of electricity and electrification, that we have restrictions there, and that does concern me. And similarly, and it hasn't come up here directly, I've concern where we have flood overlays and the clash between flood overlays and heritage overlays and the restrictions that can place in areas of and the impediments that can place on property owners. There are elements that we weigh up, and I at least, as an individual councillor, factor in, okay, we go down this path, but we equally put down some restrictions that I find confronting as a policymaker. So, look, I appreciate that's the position of the council, but I'm going to support Councillor Thompson's motion.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. There be no further councillors wishing to speak. Councillor Thompson, you don't wish to make a final comments?
No, I think Councillor Franco, I thank him for his support, and yep, let's get on with the vote.
Sure. Let me put that motion. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Thank you, officers, and thank you all the presenters this evening. The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll move to the next item and final item in the main agenda, 18 to 30 Whitehorse Road, Dipdean. This item will be presented by Mr. Jack Richardson. Mr. Richardson, please proceed.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. I present item number 3.4 for planning permit application PP 220319, which seeks the use and development of the land for a mixed-use building comprising a health club, retail, residential hotel and dwellings to vary an easement to reduce the standard number of car parking spaces required and create or alter an access to a road in a Transport Zone 2 at 18 to 30 Whitehorse Road, Deepdean. The subject site is zoned within the Commercial 1 zone with a small proposed overhang into the Transport 2 zone. The site is also affected by the parking overlay, design and development overlay and environmental order overlay. The application proposes a mixed-use building which is partially 3 and partially 4 stories in height with a maximum overall height of 12 metres. The building contains 2 levels of basement. The building would contain uses including a health club, retail uses and a residential hotel, whilst the centre and rear of the site will contain residential dwellings. 73 car parking spaces are proposed, with a proposed reduction in the standard car parking requirement of 12 spaces associated with the retail visitor parking. The application was advertised in March and April 2023, with notices sent to owners and occupiers of adjoining land and a sign placed on both the anniversary trail, the western boundary of the site, and the frontage to Whitehorse Road. A total of 13 objections have been received to the proposal. The objections predominantly relate to the following concerns: built form concerns relating to the height, bulk and scale of the proposed development, the response to the neighbourhood design overlay in relation to neighbourhood character in integration with the public realm, response to relevant planning controls in relation to not promoting sustainability, improving functionality, accessibility, integration with the public realm and addressing scale and identity, amenity impacts to neighbouring residential properties to the east, impact to neighbouring trees and vegetation, particularly along Anniversary Trail, and of lack of car parking provision, including for visitors, and the impacts that this will have. A thorough assessment of the proposal has been undertaken against the Boroondara planning scheme, as outlined in the Planning Assessment Report. It is considered that the proposal strengthens the Deepdean Neighbourhood Centre through the provision of new land uses, which will benefit the local community by enabling additional services that may be provided, facilitating economic development and providing new housing opportunities within an established urban area. The proposed development offers a built form that responds well to the applicable planning controls and will allow revitalisation of a large site in a prominent position within the neighbourhood centre. The development has been designed with an appropriate facade to the Whitehorse Road frontage, varied heights that follow the topography of the land, appropriate setbacks to side boundaries, whilst minimising amenity impact to neighbouring residential properties. An assessment against Clause 55 of the planning scheme highlights that the development will have acceptable impacts to neighbouring residential properties within the context of these properties adjoining a commercial zone and a neighbourhood centre. The proposed development has been supported by a number of internal council departments. Of significance, Council's Arborist and Environmental Sustainability and Open Space Department in relation to the impacts to vegetation, and the Traffic Department, as well as the Department of Transport in relation to the proposed car parking provision. It is recommended that Council issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit subject to the conditions detailed in the report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. We have two people that have indicated they wish to speak this evening. Mr. David Cash first, opposing the officer's recommendation. Mr. Cash, would you proceed to the horseshoe table? Remind you that you have 3 minutes. Start with your name and sub, please.
My name's David Cash. I'm representing the Owners Corporation at 31 Barnsbury Road, Deepdene. So what I want to address the Council, on behalf of the Owners Corporation of 31 Barnsbury Road, I'd like to voice the following reservations about the development at 18 to 30 Whitehorse Road in its current form. Overlooking and shading. The eastern elevation of the proposal presents as a 4-storey building at the mandatory 3 metres from the common boundary, with the ground level of 18 to 30 Whitehorse Road being at a higher elevation than our property. One of the planned elevations indicates the proposed building roofline will be up to 6 metres above the pitched roof of our buildings. The shade analysis on the 22nd of September shows a minimal shading to our property within the current guidelines. However, there's no shade analysis for any other times of the year, such as 21st of June, for example. On balance, in all seasons, there'll be less natural light for the buildings and common areas adjacent to the western boundary of our property. This, coupled with the excessive bulk of the building looming over our buildings along the western boundary, will result in reduced amenity to our property at 31 Barnsbury Road. At the very least, the setback of the building should be increased or the roofline lowered. The second reservation we have is about the site excavation. The plans indicate considerable excavation of up to 2 levels of basement car parking. Recent experience from the development at 29 Barnsbury Road on the southern boundary show changes to the natural ground level can result in damage to the structures and buildings on our property. We request a dilapidation report to be carried out on the structures and buildings on our property prior to commencement of any works. The third reservation we have is about the noise nuisance coming from the property. The mixed nature of the development, including a health club, will cause excessive noise to our residential site. A gym operating on a 24-hour basis is already present on the site and has resulted in a noise nuisance to our property. This has resulted in many complaints, and at the very least, I think the health club should have a restricted operation of not 24 hour, or not on a 24 hours basis, as is the current gym. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cash. Councillors, any questions for Mr. Cash? There'll be no questions. You may return.
Thanks.
Oh, there is one. Sorry, Councillor Vigor.
Sorry, I just jumped in at the last minute.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, when you refer to the work that was done recently on 21, that's on the other boundary.
Yeah.
Was there 29? Sorry, was there damage done to?
Yes, there was a dilapidation report done, but recently we've noticed a lot of cracking in our retaining walls, and in a couple of the garages, the walls are sort of leaning in. And it's right on the boundary of the property, and we've concluded that it might be a result of the excavation in that property.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask another just follow-up? And just on your third point about the gym on site already causing noise-related problems, that's a 24-hour.
Yes, that's a 24-hour operation currently.
And has there been discussion amongst your owners group about what you think is a reasonable?
Well, I think it should be less than 24 hours. I mean, we did make a lot of complaints to council, and an officer came and assessed it, and they were exceeding their noise limits, and as a result, they've mitigated to some extent. But I don't believe it should be running on a 24-hour basis.
Because most of your complaints related to things in the middle of the night, sort of.
Yeah, dropping of weights and bouncing of balls.
At 3 in the morning or something.
Yeah,
okay.
That's right.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vigor. There will be no further questions. Mr. Cash, you may return to your seat in the gallery. Thank you very much for your presentation this evening. The next speaker we have is Mr. Jose Fiuet. Start with your name and suburb, sir. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, councillors. My name is Jose Virgues from Human Habitats, and I'm representing the applicant today. Let me start off firstly by saying that we are supportive of the officer recommendation. We have worked extensively with council to get to this point. The application process was approximately 12 months. We've resolved a number of issues, including working through a number of the objections, put forward a response to each of those objections, and have considered the amenity, the enabled character requirements and traffic requirements put forward by each of those objectors. We've also managed to work through a number of issues with the department with regards to the trail and access to the trail, and also retention of vegetation across the site and within the trail itself. Look, the reality is that this proposal is a well-designed, articulated proposal that puts forward a suitable response to the site's topography. Now, we understand that there are considerations for the neighbours, but we've taken that into consideration, and our planning response and our design response has factored in those setbacks and done that accordingly. And in terms of the issues associated with the health club itself, one of the main reasons why the commercial elements of the proposal are pushed to the front along White Horse Road is to obviously maximise its frontage and also the consideration of the amenity of the surrounding area. We ask that the councillors see the hard work that's been put forward and the hard work that their officers have done during this time and recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Fiuet. Any Councillor Sinfield, question for Mr. Fiuet?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and through you, Jose, thanks for presenting to us tonight. Are you able to confirm for me the 540 metres of retail space is separate to the health club space, so that's not amalgamated in that square meterage? Thank you.
So, you've got it. Thank you. Any other questions? No. Councillor Bigger.
Yes, you probably know where this is going, but so based on, well, first question is whether or not you have met with the Owners Corporation at 31 Barnsbury.
No, I have not. No, we have not met with them. We received the objections and responded to council accordingly. We weren't advised to meet with them. It wasn't really offered as part of the process.
That's all right, just asking. This might be difficult for you to respond on, but basically, based on what you've just heard in terms of their concern about noise in a 24-hour gym, has there been any discussion about limiting those hours of the gym? I don't think your light is on, just before you respond.
It was just there. There we go. In terms of the operating hours, there's been no discussion about reducing those hours. As I said, as part of my initial discussion, the thinking is that it is within the commercial precinct and forward close to White Horse Road and separated from the Owners Corp themselves, which is further east from the site, from that central area. So there's been no discussion about reducing that. That didn't form part of any discussions as part of the application.
I'd be surprised if there were too many 24-hour things going on in that part of town, but thank you very much.
Thank you. There'll be no further questions. You may return to the Assembly Gallery. Councillors, I'm seeking...
Actually, could I ask a question? Would that be all right, Chair?
Oh, absolutely. Please come back. Yes, I didn't see your name there, but...
Sorry.
No, I hadn't seen your name. That's why I'm sorry.
No, I just put it on at the last minute.
Okay.
I was trying to research something while just on the noise issue, and I don't know if you're in a position to answer this, but condition 50, condition 60 that's proposed refers to the weights, including dumbbells, kettlebells, having to be rubberised and only to be utilised on designated rubber mat areas on the ground floor. Do you know if the gym currently has those?
In terms of our proposed gym?
Yeah, or the existing?
No, I have no idea about the existing gym.
Right.
But if it's a condition of the permit, our client is happy to consider it and will comply with that requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think we're finished now with the questions. You may return to your seat in the gallery. We'll now return to officers' matters arising.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. In terms of matters arising, there was matters in regards to overlooking, overshadowing, excavation, and of the basements and noise associated with the gym. So I'll address them one by one. In terms of overlooking and to a similar degree overshadowing in relation to the property at 31 Barnsbury Road, which was specifically raised, the plans provided, as well as investigation by council officers, including site visits and use of aerials and photos, shows that there is no secluded private open space at number 31 Barnsbury Road. The area outside of buildings close to the shared property boundary is in fact common property. In most locations it has carports or open common space, sometimes used, for example, as clotheslines. Therefore, council officers' assessment shows, in terms of firstly overlooking, that within 9 metres of any habitable room window of that property, there is not secluded private open space, and therefore the relevant overlooking standard of clause 55 complies without additional screening. You will see within the plans that there is some level of screening provided by the applicant and some conditions in our recommendation relating to that. But it is common property at number 31. In terms of overshadowing, in a similar sense, because it is not secluded private open space that is overshadowed, it complies with the development complies with the relevant standard of clause 55. The applicant's overshadowing assessments show, in relation to number 31, that there is a minor overshadowing of that common property area at 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. However, earlier than that in the day, any overshadowing is retained within the existing fence lines the shadow of the existing fences at the property. In terms of the next matter, excavation and construction relating to the 2 levels of basement, officer's recommendation does include a condition for a construction management plan to be provided and endorsed, which will then form as part of the planning permit, and would obviously then be an enforceable document by council. In relation to dilapidation survey, which was specifically commented on, when a building is proposed to be constructed within close proximity to a building on an adjoining allotment, the building surveyor issuing the building permit must have regard to the protection of that adjoining property. It's officers' understanding that that building surveyor may rely upon something such as a dilapidation report as part of that, but it's not specifically considered as part of the planning permit application. And the final matter in relation to noise impacts, specifically in relation to the health club or gym, conditions 53 to 61 address noise generated by the gym, and to a lesser extent, condition 62, which is more broadly in relation to the amenity of the area by the development and the uses contained within it.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Councillors, are there any questions for Mr. Richardson? Councillor Thompson, followed by Councillor Franco.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Bob, just picking up on those references that you made to the gym, which clauses were they again? Sorry.
Councillor, 55 and 56 were the ones.
And Mr. Richardson, could you just...
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah. So condition 53 through to 61 are specifically in relation to noise impacts associated with the gym.
Okay, I might ask a couple of other questions. I'll read through those in a tick. Is the gym located above a basement, or is it founded on ground?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the gym is located in the lowest level of the lowest basement level.
So it's actually founded on ground, because one of the great concerns I have is a gym that's founded above a basement, because the percussive sound goes straight through the building, and it's probably less a concern with the adjoining owners, it's more of a concern for those that are in the building. To that end, do the clauses, and I'll have a look through the clauses, do the clauses address that percussive nature, or is that simply a building matter that needs to be dealt with?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the gym is definitely in the lowest level of the proposed development, so basement level 2. There is no level below that. It's therefore built on ground, natural ground, as opposed to above a proposed level below.
Okay, so it'll transfer into the ground. Okay, thanks, and I'll read through those conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Franco, your turn.
Yes, just on those conditions, I wanted to ask specifically about, bear with me, my glasses are not adequate, I'm trying to expand. The condition 56, where it says, at the request of the responsible owner authority, the owner or occupier must within 30 days supply an assessment. Is 30 days standard, or is it too long? Could it be 14? I don't know what we normally do or what's considered appropriate. And in the second paragraph, it says that if we're dissatisfied with the noise, we can request additional noise control features. Is that a standard a standard clause that we provide? I'm just not sure. I presume we deal with applications, whether they're, nightclubs or, venues with noise, or in this case it's a gym. Is that a standard condition that we use? And if the owner or occupier refuse, how do we enforce that condition?
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Mr. Richardson?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the entire wording of condition 56, testing of noise emissions, is a standard planning permit condition. It's one that we include for uses with noise impact risk, such as a gym. As a condition in the permit, it's enforceable, and therefore if we were to request the relevant documentation, the 30 days is standard, but it will be an enforceable condition.
Thank you. Perhaps just to add through yourself, Chair, it is an enforceable condition, and it can be subject to orders being issued by VCAT should council pursue an enforcement order to require that condition to be complied with. So court orders essentially can be issued, or VCAT orders to comply.
Thank you, Mr. Richard. Mr. Walker. Councillor Sinfield, followed by Councillor Biggar.
Thank you. I've got 3 questions, if I may, Chair. The first is in relation to parking and the dispensation proposed. The covering note by officers in the introduction of the report says in the final dot point in the middle of the page that a requirement of 12 spaces associated with retail visitor parking be waived, for want of a better description. However, further into the report, and I think it's about page 367 of our amalgamated papers, the numbers 14 and 15 as far as dispensation is concerned are cited.
Chair, we are just clarifying the most recent traffic referral in regard to this particular application. Obviously, there are amendments to applications throughout the application process that can adjust the retail numbers or numbers that require a car parking dispensation, if you like. We understand that the relevant number is 12 spaces, but we'll just clarify that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Perhaps while officers are looking that up, I might proceed with my second question, Chair.
Absolutely.
If
Thank you.
that's all right with you, and that's just in relation to overlooking on the eastern interface. And I'd just like some confidence from officers that the required setback is achieved there on the eastern side. I understand that the requirements of B22 and so forth are incorporated in the conditions as far as mitigating some of that, but just as far as setback and overlooking is concerned.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. Just the officers finalising their response and ready?
Through you, Mr. Chair. In terms of the reduction in car parking, we can confirm that the latest Traffic Department referral response is dated the 3rd of October. That specifies a reduction of 13 car parking spaces associated with the retail use. In regards to setbacks to the eastern boundary, as detailed within the report, there are councillors' officers' assessment has pinpointed a number of locations along the eastern boundary to determine whether or not the proposed development complies with standard B17 side and rear setbacks. Whilst there are some locations of minor non-compliance with the numerical standard, we have taken a view that those non-compliances are appropriate or acceptable based on, for example, common property being located specifically adjoining those on the neighbouring properties as opposed to secluded private open space.
A follow-up, if I may.
You sure, Councillor Sinfield?
Thanks. So first of all, in relation to the parking, the officer's covering report says 12 spaces, and you're confirming that it's 13, according to the traffic study of the 3rd of October?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's correct.
Can we just go to that traffic study, which is on page 367? And I'm just seeking some insight from officers because the total line there on that seems to be a difference of 17 spaces, 13 for the retail and the balance found elsewhere.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that is correct, that there is also a reduction of 4 spaces associated with the gym, based on the floor area of the gym. However, Council's Traffic Department is supportive of that reduction.
Okay. So the officer's report is therefore not right. Is that what we're concluding on that summary there on the front page?
Thanks, Chair. The reference to 12 spaces in the officer report in the front page on the summary is referring to the car parking reduction for the retail component. So that's 12 versus the 13 in the more detailed report.
But through omission, it leads us to think that the difference in the car parking requirement and the provision provided is 12 when in fact it's 17. So I draw that to the attention of my colleagues when they're considering this. And as far as my other matter raised, the overlooking and setback, can I have some confirmation that any reduction in the numeric requirement as far as setback is concerned is entirely limited to shared space and none of it encroaches on private secluded open space?
Through you, Mr. Chair. There is one location, it's detailed within the Clause 55 assessment to the report, which details a variation supported by the officers. It's 0.5 relating to the second floor level of labelled on the plans as private residence, the southernmost or rear dwelling of the proposal. There is a variation supported that is adjoining a secluded private open space of an apartment located at number 29 Barnsbury Road.
Is there a page reference number for councillors to be able to look at this space?
Through you, Mr. Chair, page 413 of the combined documentation.
Thank you. And apologies, Chair. And what's that encroachment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is the standard of side and rear setback, standard B17 of clause 55, requires a setback of 7.09 metres at second floor level. The proposal is a setback of 5.4 metres.
Thank you, Chair. I'll consider our options here.
Councillor Sinfield, you've completed your questions?
For now.
For now.
Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Bigger, followed by Councillor Gillies.
Yes, thank you. So I'm just interested to know, and I might have missed this, whether there's a view, but I see that obviously there are a number of trees to be retained. I'm just wondering if is that nearly all the trees that are along the anniversary trail are intended to be retained? And is it possible to, is there a view at all, a proposed view which shows the impact from the anniversary trail?
Through you, Mr. Chair. All trees along Anniversary Trail are to be retained, and that is to the satisfaction of DEECA, an state government department. They have requested, and we've included within our recommendation wording in regards to them needing to provide approval for any pruning to the trees within the Anniversary Trail, but they are all proposed and supported to be retained.
Great. Yeah, that was one of my next question relating to what I think might be the Department of Energy, Environment, and Climate Action or something. Yes. Okay, thank you very much. And then I just have one other, I apologize, slightly pedantic piece, but in terms of the objections on page 31, the second, I guess for the sake of the objector, when I looked at where it says the objection, the summary of the objection is the proposal fails to respond to clause 11.03. It's that I do feel that our response in the second paragraph is not understandable. in English, and I wonder if it's possible for us to just, if officers maybe could just instead speak to our response, if that makes sense.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The objection specifically raises concerns with how the development responds to clause 1103 of the planning scheme. The officer response to that objection within the table and the paragraph specifically referred to is making a point that the current conditions of the site are that there is a number of separated buildings and uses within the site that are in disconnect with the anniversary trail. Essentially, the anniversary trail and the site do not have a relationship to one another. And the officer comment there, based on the assessment that's been complete, is expressing that the proposed development and the proposed uses result in a positive outcome for the site and the relationship with the public realm, in this case specifically in regards to anniversary trail.
Great, thank you. That's a big improvement, and I think it would be helpful for somebody who is trying to understand that particular piece. So thank you for taking the time to do that. I appreciate it.
Councillor Gillies.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the construction management plan, condition 41, can I just draw your attention to item D and item J marrying together? So item D reads, a plan showing the location of parking areas for construction and subcontractors' vehicles on and surrounding the site to ensure the vehicles associated with construction cause minimum disruption to surrounding premises. Then marrying that with item J, a site plan showing the location of any site, sheds, on-site amenities, building waste and the like, noting that council does not support site sheds on council road reserves. Can I just ask, please, is the car park to the west of the site, which is predominantly used by the primary school to the west of that, staff, is that a council road reserve? And behind all this is my interest in how is this going to affect the staff and the families of that school with all these construction vehicles. And to the best of my knowledge, that's about the only place you could actually put your construction machinery and sheds and paraphernalia.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Mr. Walker.
Thanks, Chair. Just in regard to the expectations around site sheds and facilities, the expectation are that these will be located on site and part of the development envelope, so they shouldn't extend onto adjoining car parking, that particularly if that car parking is vitally needed for other purposes, such as the school drop-off. So that's certainly the intention of the site sheds and site requirements condition. And likewise, when there is reference to accommodating car parking, it may be if there's occupation or access to adjoining land that the developer may be able to obtain or negotiate, but certainly wouldn't be in reference to publicly available land that's used for car parking purposes.
Councillor Gillies, are you comfortable with that answer? I've got Councillor Park and then Councillor Thompson.
I might go after Councillor Thompson if that's convenient.
Absolutely, at your mercy, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Councillor Park. Just through you again, Chair, apologies for coming back for a second bite of the apple. I'm on page 385 of the PDF, or 79 out of 168, depending on how you look at it. Question in relation to Tree 18. What's been referenced previously in a discussion or response to Councillor Bigger. There's obviously a sewer diversion through the site. That sewer diversion then turns 90 degrees and My question to officers is, why do we not consider the encroachment impact outside of our boundary? Because from what I can tell, that sewer line goes directly under tree 18. So it's page 79 of 168. So of the PDF, 79 of 168, or it's got 385 on the footer.
Thank you, Mr. Thomason. Just the officers are just finalising their conferring there.
Through yourself, Chair, if I can just maybe seek further clarification and explore that question a little bit further. Tree 18 on that page is shown on the adjoining property, and there is reference in the notations on that plan around the impact on the tree protection zone. That's shaded in red there in the basement area of that, that particular development. And that is indicated as a 9% encroachment into that tree's
my
protection zone area.
My comment is there's a sewer diversion, so there's actually two branches. There's the one that runs through the site, and then there's what looks like maybe 10, 15 metres that runs along parallel with the boundary on the opposite side, not on the property side. Is that not impacting on that tree? So according to the sewer diversion plan that's later on the report, it certainly looks like it.
Through yourself, Chair, if we just take a moment, we'll look at the more detailed plans. We'll reference those and check that relationship. But I certainly understand the point being made, which is the impact of that sewer potentially on the tree protection zone on the outside of the property boundary. It would normally be something to take into consideration and be covered by conditions and expectations of the owner of that tree as well in relation to what work they will accept and within that area.
And have we referred that to DECA for their approval?
Through yourself, Chair, yes, the overall proposal has been referred to DECA for their referral, comments and consideration, so they certainly have received the relevant plans for this proposal. Again, through yourself, Chair, I've just been advised by the officer who's now looked at the more detailed plans that sewer relocation is one that's already in place. So it's not a new sewer proposed as part of the development proposal.
So what appears to run vertically with now a dog leg, is the dog leg now installed? So 141 of 168 was the other.
Again, through yourself, Chair, and there may be some inconsistency in reference to the plan that's, or indications of the sewer on this plan here. However, the more detailed plans that officers have available and have now reviewed definitely show the sewer relocation at a different location to the one shown on this this dogleg plan. Yeah. So we don't believe that there's an impact on this particular tree as part of the proposed sewer works. At the end of the day, any works within that area will need to be to the satisfaction of the relevant owner and authority that's in place there.
That's right. Yeah, there is an inconsistency when you look at the detailed plans at the back. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Park.
Thank you, Chair. Condition 1, the somewhat confused description of the engineer towards the very end of the first paragraph, where it says a suitably registered professional civil engineer, qualified engineer. That's obviously nonsensical. From my reading of the legislation, it probably ought to read a registered professional civil engineer with endorsement as a building engineer.
Through yourself, Chair, that is the case that this does not read correctly. It could be tidied up with some minor adjustments to the wording, and that's something that we are happy to do. That could be something in the order of the plans must be prepared by a suitably qualified registered professional.
So my suggestion is registered professional civil engineer with endorsement as a building engineer.
I'd be comfortable with that, that change.
And somewhere else I saw, and I can't readily re-find it, a reference to Standards Australia International Limited. It's been known as Standards Australia Limited for some time. So they changed the company name many years ago. So I don't know if you need to do a search for Standards Australia or something, you'll find it. There it is, yeah. It's just deletion of, it's described multiple different ways. Its correct name is Standards Australia Limited. And
I believe you're talking page 11, Councillor Park, number 35?
Yeah, as well.
Yeah.
I'd suggest that officers just scour through and tidy these things up, because we shouldn't be conditioning things in respect of non-existent bodies.
Yep.
Thanks, Chair, and through yourself, thank you for that clarification, and we will we'll certainly look to tidy up some of these in our standard conditions and ensure that they make the correct references.
Thank you, Councillor Park, and it appears that we've exhausted the questions for officers. There'll be no further questions. I am in search of a motion. Councillor Sinfield.
You have a reluctant motion coming forth here.
Sorry, I had to ask. And a second, Councillor?
That would be for the benefit of anyone. For the benefit of anybody, it is the officer's recommendation.
I think we have to clarify what the motion is, but I think the motion is that the amendments will be made, and Councillor Sinfield has endorsed it on that basis. Am I right, Councillor Sinfield?
You are.
And then, sorry, Councillor Watson, did you?
Happy to second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillors, is there any opposition to this motion?
I'd just like to clarify, it's the officer's recommendation. Yeah. Thank you,
Councillor Franco. So we have the officer's recommendation, and the amendments will be made as recommended by Councillor Park and others. Are you comfortable with that?
Through yourself, Chair, absolutely, yes, the officer recommendation with the changes as noted.
Excellent. Thank you for that. There've been no opposition, I believe. Councillor Sinfield, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Thank you. I will just briefly, and I'll start by saying I don't think I've ever seen an application come through this chamber with so many conditions on it. There are 65 numeric conditions and most of them have got A to Z within them. However, if you're going to deliver such a significant development, this is probably about the most appropriate location where you can do so. It's on a great walking trail, it's got great vehicle access, it's got great public transport out the front, and thankfully, for the developer's sake, the tram stop is about 100 metres down the road and won't interfere with the development. And it has a non-residential interface on 2 of its sides. So it's probably fairly well sited from that aspect. I think delivering a development that provides 25 3-bedroom dwellings, 3 retail spaces, a 20-room hotel and a health club will be a significant boost to the Deepdene area. I'm surprised there haven't been more objections, to be honest, than the 13 received, and I think many of those have been worked through by officers with the plethora of conditions that now apply. I'm less than happy with a dispensation of 17 parking spaces, but that's not enough for me to suggest a refusal motion in this circumstance, in this particular geographic location. I don't know that I've ever really been happy with 1 or 2, let alone 17 as it is now determined. So we've spent a significant amount of time on this, as too have officers, and I commend the officers' recommendation to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. There'd be no opposition to the matter. Do you wish to speak to Councillor Watson? Councillor Sinfield, you don't need to say anything further. Thank you for that. I will now put the motion. Councillors, all those in favour? Thank you, councillors. I declare the motion carried unanimously. Thank you to the officers and the presenters in the gallery. Thank you very much for your work. Finishing the major part of the agenda, we've gone to the next item, which is general business. Councillors, are there any matters of general business? There have been no matters of general business. Any urgent business? No urgent business. There'll be no confidential business. Thank you, councillors. But before I close the meeting, I'd like to thank all of you who joined us this evening and declare the Urban Planning Delegated Committee meeting closed. Thank you so much.